everyone! Today for our leveled read aloud, we're going to be reading The Cuckoo's Sacrifice, a tale from Yucatan. And this is told by Joseph da Silva, and it's illustrated by Tom Leonard. I thought this would be a fun book to read today since we've talked about birds and science yesterday, so let's go ahead and get started. Our strategy focus. Why do the forest birds of the Yucatan have such pretty feathers and beautiful voices, but the cuckoo does not? As you read, ask yourself other questions about the story and look for answers. So pause this video and ask yourself questions throughout this read. Have you ever noticed how brightly colored most birds in Yucatan are? A peninsula in southeastern Mexico, the Yucatan is famous for its unique mangrove forest where more than 300 species of birds make their home. There you see gorgeous parrots with crimson heads and bright blue winged feathers. Long-legged flamingos flock to the shores. Yucatan jays make an impression with their black bodies, yellow beaks, and wings of vibrant blue. Bright green macaws wear yellow feather necklaces. And if you're lucky, you might glimpse the colorful toucans with their giant bills hiding among the forest emerald leaves. However, if you manage to spot a cuckoo, you can't help but notice that the bird is not as colorful as others. Instead, its feathers are dull gray. The bird doesn't sound as glorious as the others either, having more of a bark than a musical song. Yet the unassuming cuckoo is a genuine hero to other birds, and its drab color and rough voice are part of the reason. Many, many years ago, before calendars kept track of time, the cuckoo was a most brightly colored bird in the forest. Indeed, she always was considered one of the most beautiful birds. Not only did she have feathers of scarlet and gold and blue and green, but she also had a lovely musical voice. At that time, however, she was not seen as heroic, and for good reason. Although the cuckoo was splendid on the outside, her character was not equally attractive. If truth be told, the cuckoo was rather foolish. She was quite vain about her appearance, and sometimes she acted a bit lazy. She would spend most of her time singing songs to herself and preening her feathers. She always waited until the last minute to find food and build a nest. Now, these are not horrible qualities, but they did keep the cuckoo from earning the respect of many other birds the forest enjoyed. Other airborne residents would fly about, building solid nests, gathering food, and generally doing good works, while the cuckoo would perch on top of the treetop and practice her songs. Her voice was certainly beautiful, but many of the other birds resented her for practicing tunes and not doing chores. One day, the rain god Chalk appeared in the forest to assemble the birds. He wore shells on his head and in his ears, and he carried a ceremonial axe. "Tomorrow is the day of the annual seed harvest," Chalk said, "when we flock to the fields to gather up all the seeds that we will need to plant next year. Once again, I ask for your participation." The birds held the harvest every autumn, and it was an event of vital importance. Every bird flew far and wide searching for favorite seeds. Some gathered wheat, some collected maize, and others harvested seeds of delicate grasses. These seeds were assembled in an enormous heap and stored for next year's planting. If no birds gather seeds from a particular plant, then that plant would forever cease to exist. Every bird in the forest knew that his or her future survival depended on the seed harvest. Chalk continued, "We will start at daybreak tomorrow, and I want everyone to be prompt. This season of the year is dry, and the fire is a constant possibility. As soon as the seeds are safely harvested, I can distribute rain everywhere to reduce a fire hazard." The birds listened intently, except for the cuckoo, who was busy preening her tail feathers. Most birds shuddered when they heard the word fire, because forest wildlife is terrified of fire. The bird's uneasy rustling and squawking attracted the cuckoo's attention. "What did he say?" the cuckoo asked to no one in particular. She looked around vaguely. "What were you supposed to be doing?" "Sorry, I wasn't really paying attention." The scarlet macaw stood at one foot and pointed to the scaly toes at the cuckoo. "You must pay attention," he warned, "because all of our lives depend on it." The cuckoo's scarlet cheeks blazed even brighter than before. "Sorry," she said again. Now it was the parrot's turn to scold. "Last year, Cuckoo, you arrived late after most of the work was finished. You pull that kind of stunt again, and no one will have any respect for you at all." Again, the cuckoo said, "Sorry," and this time she tucked her head under the wing. "Enough squabbling," said Chalk sternly. "We need to protect each other, not pick each other to pieces. Tomorrow's going to be a long day, everyone. Now get to bed early, because you'll need to feel rested in the morning." That night, all the birds went to their nest and slept soundly, all except the cuckoo. She was embarrassed by the scolding that she had received, yet she secretly knew that she deserved it. In the past, she had not really done as much work as the others, nor had she taken their problems seriously. She promised to herself from this moment on she would try to be a responsible citizen of the forest. The next morning, the birds of the Yucatan woke in confusion. Thick black smoke filled the heavens. The forest was ablaze. In the underbrush, flames licked the trunks of the trees, and the dry grasses fueled the fire. The heat was so intense that the roar of the fire so deafening that the terrified birds were driven towards the shoreline. They were huddled together near the water's edge to plan what to do next. At first they felt relieved that they had escaped with their lives. The parrot moaned, saying, "We're doomed!" The fire had come before the annual seed harvest. Chalk was not able to bring the rain in time to save the seeds. Now we're not going to have any food for next year. We're all going to die of starvation. With growing horror, the others realized the parrot was right. Not only would their homes in the trees be destroyed, but also the fire had stolen their chance to gather the seeds that were necessary for their survival. The birds exchanged frantic looks and began to argue about what they should do next. Then a small movement in the sky caught their attention. From the center of one billowing cloud of smoke, a single bird slowly soared. It was an unfamiliar gray and sooty bird whose feathers had been scorched by the fire's fierce heat. It carried a large packet in its bill, and it flew right into the safety of a cave by the water's edge. When the bedraggled bird emerged from the cave a few minutes later, the others beckoned it to join them. When the bird fluttered down, they were amazed to discover its identity. Even the flamingos waited closer to take a look at the new arrival. A pair of jays found a leaf with fresh water and brought it over to the exhausted bird to drink. It was the cuckoo, but she looked very different than she had from the day before. "Cuckoo, what happened? Where have you been?" asked the toucan. All the other birds anxiously waited in silence. They all wanted to hear Cuckoo's story. Cuckoo opened her mouth to speak, but instead of her glorious song, only a croak emerged. Her throat had been singed by the terrible heat, and her voice was now harsh and rough. "I was worried about oversleeping," she whispered, "that I couldn't fall asleep. I felt guilty about being lazy in the past. I wanted to prove to you that I could do my fair share of the work. Just after midnight, I smelled smoke, and I realized that a fire had broken out somewhere. I flew to the fields to gather up as much wheat and maize and other seeds as I could. I knew how important the harvest was, so I worked all night gathering seeds and carrying them to the cave where I knew they would be safe. I was so busy flying back and forth, I had no idea how far the fire spread until I saw all of you rushing towards the shore." In the rush of wings, all the birds flew into the cave. They were stunned to see that it was filled with every kind of seed in the forest. They turned again to the cuckoo, realizing how badly they had misjudged the little bird. They knew that she was as terrified of the fire as they were. Yet she had overcome her fear for the sake of all the birds in the forest. "You risked your life for us," said the macaw. "You sacrificed your gorgeous feathers so that we could eat next year. Why didn't you alert someone?" "No time," answered the cuckoo simply. Then suddenly she realized what else the macaw had said. She looked at herself carefully. "My feathers! What's happened to my feathers?" she wailed. Until that moment, she had not known that she was no longer a beautifully, brightly colored bird. The cuckoo again looked at her dull gray feathers and burst out crying. "Oh, my feathers are ruined!" she croaked. Then her face lost all the color again, and she made another discovery. "My voice is ruined too." She began to sob pitifully, wondering what her life would be like right now. The parrot stepped forward and spoke for them all. "You are a genuine hero, Cuckoo, and you showed great courage. Such selfless behavior surely deserves a suitable award," he said. "You should rest for a while we talk amongst ourselves to determine how to best repay you." While the cuckoo nestled in the cave for a nap, the other birds crowded together at the shoreline to determine the best reward for the cuckoo. Every bird had something to say. They whispered, burbled, and squawked. They talked about a very large pile of seed that the cuckoo had gathered and wondered how she managed to do so much work alone. Cuckoo worked very hard to the parrot, risking her life so that we all would survive. For once, she didn't think about her beauty or her singing voice. She showed more bravery than any other bird in the forest. The others nodded in agreement. But what could they offer the cuckoo that would equal the value of the life-giving seeds? Finally, the birds arrived at a decision. They reasoned that the little cuckoo had worked so hard for them that she should never have to work as hard again. The parrot went to get the cuckoo so that the group could tell her the decision. Soon the drab cuckoo stood again before the other forest birds. Soot covered her feathers. "All the birds here owe you a great debt, Cuckoo," began the toucan, "and this is how we'd like to repay you. From this day on, you can lay your eggs in any bird's nest, and that bird will raise your young as its own." The cuckoo smiled. She nodded softly, gracefully accepting the gift. This is why, even today, the cuckoo is not as bright as the other colored birds in the Yucatan and does not sing as beautifully as they. It is also why she lays her eggs in other birds' nests. Oh, what an awesome story. I'm going to include the questions in the description box below. As always, you can either talk about them think about them, or write them down, whatever you would prefer to help you check your comprehension of this story. And I'll see you guys in the next read aloud.